This podcast is brought to you by JAM, Junction Arts and Media, building community in the Upper Valley through media.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Going to Dismas. Today I have some very special guests with me. I have Maranda, a student at Hartford High School, Doug, Mr. Anton, what do we go by?
You can go by Doug here.
Doug, and Shawn, a current resident of Hartford Dismas House. So in one of my final acts as a house director, I brought a group over to Hartford High School as we've been invited in the past. And I had residents present their stories to the class, and the class asked questions and just learns about the judicial system, what jail was like, what getting out is like. And Shawn was part of this last presentation, and what we're going to try to do is kind of replicate that experience. So we're going to, first let's go around, I guess everybody just say hello, introduce yourselves and what your roles are, and then we'll jump into Shawn's story.
I'm Maranda. I'm the student at Hartford High School.
My name is Doug Anton. I teach social studies at Hartford High School, and I teach a class called Justice each semester where we look at the justice system both in Vermont and nationally. And Maranda graciously volunteered to come be part of this podcast, so super excited to be here.
And I'm Shawn. I'm the Dismas guy.
All right, Dismas guy, let's just jump into it. What's your story? Where'd you grow up? What got you here?
A little bit of backstory is grew up in state's custody, I guess, when I was 11 years old. Started there, just continued on. Found drinking at 16. That was my downfall, I guess you'd say, for the rest of my life. I enjoy drinking and nothing makes me feel like alcohol. So I started going to jail at the age of 18, graduated high school, and that summer I was in prison. So that was my kind of introduction to my adult life. It's been a struggle in and out of jail my whole life. I don't think I've ever been off supervision.
Is alcohol the recurring issue?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I continue to drink and I'll break into a place, and it's kind of a revolving thing for me. And it's more, I think, now for help. When I start drinking, I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to ask for help. So my thinking is that I can stop. I can go to jail. And that's usually what happens. That's where I get sober.
That's the deterrent. You don't want to go back to jail. Like, what's the key to helping you recover in your mind?
Just healthy living, having a good job and doing the things that I need to do to take care of me. And that's sports, outdoors, doing positive things that way. Very active outside. I prefer to be outdoors.
One thing I remember you telling my class about a few weeks ago was, for you, prison was obviously not a positive experience, but like you said, it was almost a place you could go to kind of get clean a bit and kind of avoid alcohol. So I'm wondering, the movies portray prison and jail as a place where you can still get access to lots of drugs and other contraband. Was that kind of your experience, or were you able to, was it a bit of a rehab in the sense of it was impossible for you to get alcohol there?
Yeah, it's impossible. Well, not impossible to get alcohol. There's other drugs. There's always that.
What about the jail environment do you find helpful? We talked about in the class that you were participating in like a peer support group.
Open ears. It's peer-to-peer, kind of like a recovery coach, I guess. We had to take a week-long class to graduate the open ears to become a coach, I guess you'd say. And then we talked to the guys if they were struggling with anything, mental health a lot. A lot of it was with mental health.
And what does it take to qualify to be a part of this?
To be a coach?
Yeah.
Put an application in, and the superintendent is the one generally that's going to make the decision on who. And it depends on, of course you have to be living your life right. They're not going to pick somebody that's got a bunch of tickets and doing the wrong thing. So
right.
They want the guys that are going to be productive in that sense and helpful. I mean, they want somebody to help with the mental health load that is increasing in prison.
Yeah, and I imagine there's not enough staff or, mental health
There's
staff
not,
to help everybody who needs it. So.
There's not. If you want to talk to somebody, it's almost impossible.
Did you get any kind of training or kind of support from the program to kind of how do you lead those conversations, or was it more just hey, you're a good listener, you're a positive person, go have a conversation?
Yeah, there's a lot of support. The week-long training was role plays, different things like that. So we kind of get in that sense of the working part of it, I guess you'd say. But yeah, and again, the prison never really bothered me. I can do time and I have no issues with it.
At what point did that mentality change for you, though? That I imagine the first time you go, it's quite a shock to the system.
Yeah.
At what point do you just say, maybe this isn't the worst thing in the world right now?
It always sucks when you go back in no matter it's your first or third or fourth, but once you get settled in, it's, it's just living your life day to day and making the best of it wherever you were at.
Maranda, you were there in the class when we presented, so you remember his story and the others. What were your key takeaways or further questions that you wanted to ask?
The way they explained how jail was a shock to me, because how they show it in movies, it's like you can really do whatever you want in there and you can get access to anything you want depending on like who you are and if you like have cops like friends with you or something. So it was very like a shock to me how they explained how jail was, and also how they don't get like the help they need when they need it. That's what really shocked me, was just like they didn't have the help that they should have got.
I mean, is there some truth to that what they portray in films, the jail system?
Sure, yeah.
You got Morgan Freeman that can smuggle you anything you want.
The guy that can get stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
There's always a guy that can get stuff.
There is some truth to it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty chill for the most part. And you have to remember it's Vermont too. Mm-hmm. There's other states that aren't so good. They have closed custody, supermax, and Vermont's pretty chill for a prison system.
Do you think your experience was unique among a lot of the other people who were also serving time, in that not that it was a fun experience, but that it wasn't as you said, it wasn't super bad. I could do that time. Were other people kind of that same mindset, or were there a lot of other people who were saying, "Get me out of here. I can't."
Yeah, there's all different kinds. It's like we're all different. Our makeup are different, and it just affects people differently. Some can do it, and most, I would say, can do it. And there's a very small number of people that struggle, that really have a hard time with it. And a lot of that is mental health. And they just don't have that help they should have.
How has the population in jail evolved from, when you first started going, the first time you went to jail, as opposed to most recently? Are there more mental health and addiction issues going on? Is there less help?
I don't know. When I first went in, there was a lot of help. For instance, I opened up Newport Prison. I was one of the first 50 people up there. Yeah, and that was a nice place to do time. It was night and day.
What year are we talking?
93. And yeah, you could come and go as you wanted. You could just do anything you wanted to do, pretty much.
You could still smoke in jail at that point,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. You didn't have to ask the CO to leave the unit. You just left the unit. They did head counts outside, wherever you were at, they'd find you. And
the other inmates in the facility, did it just have a different feel to it by comparison to now?
Yeah. It was a lot more open. Now it's closed right up, where you can't go anywhere, really. Very limited outside rec.
And what is the reason for that? Is that an attempt to, be more punishing and a negative experience for the inmates?
I think so. And over time, people would mess things up one way or another, where they would take this away and they take that away. And slowly it just started taking things away. And this is what we're left with, I guess, in that sense.
Kind of reminds me of high school to some degree, right? A few kids, everyone has this freedom to leave campus or whatever for lunch, and then all it takes is one kid abusing that freedom, and then now nobody gets that anymore.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's exactly the same, yeah.
What else have you guys taken away from these presentations in terms of, I guess, really anything, the jail experience or what it's like to get out and restart?
Well, I've taken from what Anton has taught us and from hearing what you guys said, most of the stuff that I heard, I knew about a little bit, but I was kind of shocked to hear about it and how the system works. I was kind of surprised when you guys were talking about it at first.
One thing we've had a lot of conversations around is the kind of nature versus nurture debate. When people it's really easy for in our class to like read an article or watch a movie or hear a story about such and such person does this terrible thing, and then the class can kind of debate, what should society do with that person? Is it death penalty? Is it jail? Is it rehab? And then I think it's really helpful to have faces and names and real people come in, right? And I know, every time we do that presentation, the students are always excited, and some of them are like, the inmates are coming, the convicts. And I appreciate how open and honest and down to earth everyone is, because ultimately that's part of my goal, is for my students to see they're just people. They're not, it's not the big bad wolf. It's not, it's not the scary monster. It's just people. And as they hear the experiences, we hear these themes. I mean, I think going back now 4 or 5 years, we've done this pretty much every time people have come, drugs and alcohol are nearly always involved. And that's, for me, one of the things I hope my students are taking away. It's not that these are, it's not serial killers. It's not the thing you see on the news or the movie. It's regular people who get in tough situations and sometimes can make choices fueled by drug or addiction or alcohol addiction or whatever it is.
And this came up on yesterday's podcast. I had Tim on, who was also there. In between classes, we had a student come up to us and express that he's having some struggles with his friends getting into drugs and being bullied. And do you remember this?
I do.
Yeah. And what was that like for you? Someone actually was seeking your advice.
Yeah, it was different, I guess, especially from a student. But yeah, hopefully he heard what we had to say and make some right decisions.
Because you come from a unique place. You're speaking from experience.
Yeah.
You all had something very valuable to offer the students, the class, everybody.
One thing that I've just noticed over time is the first time we did this, I just had one section of this class. It was 15 kids or so. And every year it gets a little bigger.
I noticed that too, yeah.
Obviously, we had to move it to the library. I kind of put the word out and people hear about it and they say, oh, that sounds really, really cool and really valuable. I want to be part of that. And so it's, for you all, it's like this, it's this hour thing. We come, we go, and then you guys move on. But, we've spent a couple of days talking, kind of preparing, thinking about questions to ask. And then after the fact, what did we hear? What were those themes that came out? And so it's just so valuable. So I really appreciate your time and your effort to do that. I'm curious to hear from you all what it's like, what kind of is that, how do you all feel leading up to that event where, you're a little bit on display, you get to sit in the middle, everyone's looking at you. I'm sure it's kind of, challenging or awkward. And
well, you go ahead and tell them you were trying to think of a way to get out of it that morning.
Yeah, sure. I just didn't feel comfortable doing it. Getting up in front of a bunch of kids, I don't know, people. Kind of daunting, I guess, and a little scary, but
that's true for any public speaking.
Yeah, I just need to face that, I guess, and go on with it.
And looking back on it, how did you feel? Were you glad you went?
Yeah, glad I went. It was a good experience, for sure.
Several of my students the next day or later that afternoon came up to me and said, Mr. Anton, I really admire those 3 guys. And I said, really, why? He said, because they did something that we all think we could do any day, right? We like to act tough and be cool, and like we don't care, we don't mind the attention. But as Maranda just says, it's easier to kind of put that bluster and bravado on. It's another thing to actually stand up in front of a group of strangers and talk about personal details and challenges and struggles, especially for something that for a lot of societies, is viewed so negatively and you're a bad person or mistakes or whatever. So I personally admire that, and I'm impressed that you can do that.
How did the student attitudes, or maybe Maranda, you can answer this, how did attitudes change from the prep work you did for this, trying to think of questions beforehand, and then the reflection afterwards? How did the perception of the criminals change?
Are you talking about the students' attitude? Mm-hmm. Well, at first, Anton, you weren't in the room for this. They were all saying it's not going to be a big deal. We're going to slack off and do all this stuff. But then when we got there and we were listening to them, it really seemed like they had all of our attentions, and it was very impacting to all of us. And after everything happened, we were talking about it for the next few days and how it impacted us and how we realized how bad it can be and we don't want to be in that position. So it changed. It definitely changed our attitude really fast.
I mean, that's great to hear. I mean, this was by no means a scared straight program, which, I don't even think that's very effective at all. It's informational. I mean, it was like a fireside chat. We just sat down and just expressed our stories. And the students were engaged. I mean, we brought pizza for halftime, and I don't think that hurt either.
Yeah.
They were more engaged then.
No, what I can say certainly is, I get up in front of them every day and try to get their attention and engage them in conversations, activities. Miranda sees the struggles. There's phones and there's chit chat, whatever. And in that library, I mean, as I looked around, everyone, you had their attention.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. By comparison, how's this compared to a normal day fighting the cell phones? Cell phones weren't really an issue when I was in high school. I got my first one at 18, my senior year. So what is it like now to teach? I guess we get a little off topic now.
That's a great question. I mean, maybe you'll start with Miranda. I mean, what do you think it's like to be a student with a cell phone and this kind of constant thing pulling your attention?
It's really hard not to look at my phone during class. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I do it in Anton's classroom all the time when he's talking. I'm not going to lie.
I know this.
But when I first got my phone, found it more difficult than I do now, because now I'm just like, okay, whatever. But when I first had it, I was very like attention on my phone, and I didn't care what was going on in the classroom. And now I'm like, okay, cool, I'll just answer it when we have like a break or something. But I also find it really annoying sometimes, because if it's something that I like in the class, or talking about it, and everyone's on their phones, they're like chit-chatting and laughing, it annoys me. I just want to yell at them, but like I know I don't have that, like, because I'm not the teacher, I'm not allowed to do that technically.
No,
but
I'll allow that anytime you want to yell at those kids. Yeah, it's a real challenge. And honestly, I see a lot of parallels to some degree to the other conversations we've been having, where people respond to their environment. And so when you have a bunch of 16, 17-year-old kids and their brains still developing, and you give them this highly engaging, highly stimulating, it's about you and who liked this picture and who sent you this message. I mean, I think the content of it, correct me if I'm wrong, Miranda, is, I mean, they're just sending Snapchat pictures of their feet or their foreheads to each other.
Basically.
And that's giving you that rush of dopamine you need?
I think it's a way of people are thinking about me.
Is we're literally snapping each other, and we're sitting right next to each other. That's the other thing. And we're texting each other, and we're right next to each other.
And some teachers, take away phones way faster than I do. Some teachers have a no phone in my classroom policy. I don't know how much experience you have with that, but I think it's hard to implement that because.
Yeah, my science teacher last year, he tried to do that, and it didn't work out.
So a little bit, the inmates are running the prison sometimes. Yeah. Same thing in school where kids have that power.
Okay, so I kind of led you down this road with intent. I think this may be the next addiction epidemic. It's screen addictions. I think we're going to see this play out over the next decades. It's been alcohol, it's been drug addictions that lead to issues, mental health issues. What are the long-term effects of screen addictions? Do you have any thoughts?
Not really. I don't get into my phone. I don't have an addiction to my phone.
And you're better for it, let me tell you.
Yeah, I don't.
Do you guys have thoughts how this could end up?
About it.
Personally, the biggest thing that I worry about, just from people my age grew up with cell phones in high school ish, and a lot of my peers my age are having kids now, and I worry about the impact on parents. So I know how tempting it is. I have two young kids. When they were really little and they're just playing around the floor, okay, I'm just gonna sit on the couch and play on my phone and not really give them my full attention. And what kind of message does that send them? I get older and I have more responsibilities in my job and extra things. My wife, she works 2 jobs. She's getting emails all the time. Almost out of necessity, it's like we're sitting at the table and I'm kind of yelling at her like, hey, get off your phone. And then just, an hour later, it's again, I'm supposed to be playing with the kids and now I'm on my phone. So it worries me a lot. And it worries me that we're asking a lot of people who already have limited self-control and the ability to kind of focus in.
Is this constant stimulation going to lead to further anxiety and depression issues? Because, patience is not existent anymore. People don't know how to function if they don't get it instantaneously.
I worry a lot about the instant gratification part, right? How many people just have this just not real image of the world because everything you see is filtered through, right? All the athletes at school are seeing the best highlight plays and they say, well, if I'm not that, I'm not good enough. And it's like, no, you're watching NBA players. Like same thing, a frustration with me. Just this morning, I play basketball with a lot of the kids on the basketball team for fun before school a couple of days. And during the season, there's an app where they share the kind of their highlight clips or whatever. And they'll come into school the next day, check out this cool block or this cool shot, but you guys lost the game. But there's not a sense of kind of team and like, it doesn't matter if they, that we lost. It's, I wanted to show you how cool my play was or my stats line. and that focus on me instead of everyone. I know maybe that's a different issue than the phone addiction, but kind of the me generation.
So you have this generation of people with instant gratification and short attention spans and just no patience. Some of these same folks are going to end up in jail at some point. And how does somebody function in jail without being mentally prepared to just be stagnant? I think it's going to be awful.
One thing I was curious about is what kind of access people in prison or jail do have to phones and the internet generally.
None. We have tablets, I guess. You can make phone calls. You can purchase movies.
Fairly unlimited access to that kind of stuff, or is there's kind of limits on time and restricted?
It's open to whatever. You have to pay for all that stuff. So whatever the money you have for the movies or the music. That's about it.
Let's talk about that just a little bit more. This is news to me too. I don't really know the extent of the tablets. I remember, last when I worked in the jails, people had, the phones, and they'd be spending thousands of dollars trying to just talk to their families, and there'd be long lines around the unit waiting for the phones. What's it like now with the tablets?
The tablet you can actually use it as a phone. So you can...
From your room or your cell?
Yeah, wherever you're at, yeah, your cell generally. Most cells it works, some it doesn't.
It runs off the Wi-Fi?
Kind of a, Wi-Fi thing, yeah.
Does everybody have their own, or is it kind of a shared thing?
Yeah, everybody has their own tablet. It may take a month or so to get one sometimes, but you get one when you come into prison.
What kind of money are we talking about to use these things? How much is phone calls or movies or?
Say a phone call would be about $1 for 20 minutes. Not too bad, I guess.
I feel like that's cheaper than it used to be.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper than it used to be. A lot cheaper.
And how much does a movie cost, or what else is on this?
Subscription for, I think, maybe 4 hours you can get for, it's $4 or $5, I think, for 4 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
That seems, is that, I wonder a little bit, I know I've, heard articles about the privatization of prisons and for-profit prisons. I wonder, is that, why can't they just buy Netflix for, everyone and just kind of share that versus you guys all individually paying several bucks for a movie?
Yeah, we have dish networks with about 100 channels.
Okay.
I wonder if this is an extension of what got us into this conversation, the generation that has instant gratification issues. And now we've moved into passive parenting, so...
Yeah, give all the inmates a tablet so they can zone out,
right.
And so everyone else can kind of do their own thing.
And I think that's part of it. There is some games they give you for free right now because of COVID, but, you're just zoning out on your computer or your screen or the TV in your cell.
So how has the jail environment changed now that everybody has access to all this by comparison to when you first went in and people were free roaming and smoking cigarettes? Are people just more docile?
I don't know. It's about the same. I think we had TVs back then in Newport, but we didn't have the tablets, and that's just the difference. And you can't do much on the tablets.
Is there any concerns of people abusing it, like hacking into the state mainframe and draining our taxes?
No, there's nothing like that can go on. I don't think you have access to the internet. You have access to a phone or something.
Kind of a pre-selected set. Yeah. Kind of like my kids' tablet, same thing. They can only access the X, Y, and Z.
That's smart.
Yeah. Kind of parental controls.
Yeah.
Not totally.
There's no internet at all.
Okay.
There's no access to that at all.
Miranda, you just got sentenced to 1 year in jail. How do you think you would function?
To be honest, I think I would be fine with it because I'm a very outside person, and I'd rather be outside playing one of my sports than being on my phone or like watching TV. I'd rather be doing something hands-on than being on electronic device.
How do you think you would deal with just the loss of freedom? So right now, besides, from 8:30 to 2:53, when you got to be in school and go to this class, which you got to choose a little bit, how would your day change, or how would your mindset change if it's 7 o'clock, time to eat breakfast, you don't show up by 7:30?
You're Mr. Anton's class, but you're locked in with those people 24/7.
I definitely think it would make me very, depressed, probably. I feel like it'd be very hard for me to get used to that. I think it'd take me a long time before I could, get in the, routine of it.
And how critical is routine to getting through jail time?
Pretty critical. We adapt. Humans adapt to almost any situation. And, so it's pretty easy to adapt to it, I guess, and just go along with it.
Let's role play then. So you're an inmate peer supporter. Miranda just came into jail. She is completely out of her element. She thought she was tough and could hack it. one weekend turns out she's getting pretty depressed and stir crazy. What would you say to her?
Do some journaling, get out and write some stuff down. Stay out of your head. Worst place somebody could be in that situation when they're first coming into prison. Yeah. Because of all the things that they've done to hurt people, and then they're there, they can't do anything to help. They're just in a bad situation, I guess, when you first come to prison.
Right, and it takes some pretty significant peer support, therapy.
Sure.
You're not going to just snap out of it.
You need to ask for that help, though. I mean, it's not going to be there for you unless you ask for it.
And even if you ask for it, I got the sense from the presentation in school that there are, not enough social workers, therapists, mental health clinicians. It's great that they're doing the program that you're involved in, but part of me wonders, is that kind of a way for them to say, well, we're giving support to X number of people, but really they're not getting all the people that they need, that higher level of support.
Yeah, they need more. They need more staff.
Yeah,
for sure, they need more staff.
Yeah, it's not even staffed appropriately as it is. I see commercials every day. DOC is hiring.
One thing that kind of random, but similar on the topic, I was on a random Wikipedia page for some prison the other day, something I was Googling, something we found in class. And I saw that it had kind of a, this prison is rated for, it had some kind of capacity number, like, number of inmates. And then the number below said like current population, and it was way higher. So that idea of, this prison was designed to house 352 people and it's got 700 people in it right now. And I just wondered, going back to that, in Vermont, how much do we have an issue with like overpopulation or not enough resources? What are those kind of challenges like?
We do, and it's mostly the regional jails, St. Johnsbury, Newport, and the smaller prisons that they'll throw people on the floors.
What they call those things? The boats?
Boats.
Yeah.
They have boat. It's a plastic.
Like a cot, kind of, or like.
Not even. It's like just a very shallow taco shell boat thing that you lay in, and your head or feet ends up very close to the toilet.
Jeez.
It's kind of like a cot, but it's on the floor. It's plastic.
Not very comfortable.
No. They have a mattress on it. That's not very comfortable either.
Yeah, I mean, how big are we talking? I remember the cells. You had 2 bunk beds, a boat on the floor, a toilet in a 10 by 10 cell.
Yeah, it's maybe 8 by 12, maybe 8 by 12, something like that. Yeah.
How'd you function with having cellmates? Was it difficult?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Some people you get along with and some people you don't. I mean, it's just like life, and you don't have a choice whether or not you're going to live with this guy. They put you in there.
Do you have any particularly difficult cellmates that you're willing to describe?
Yeah. Just dirty people, womanizing people, just dehumanizing, those kind of people I don't deal well with, talking bad about other people, and that's not me, and I'm not going to, that's where my difficulties were, to tell them to shut up, and and I don't want to hear it. And then there becomes a friction in the room, and something could come out of that.
Almost all the fights I've seen in jail came between cellmates.
Yeah.
It very rarely crossed cells. Yeah. I think that just speaks to the difficulty of living in an
8 by 12 room. Yeah. It was right on top of each other. I mean,
Do you have any sort of influence, or, can you request new cellmates and kind of, fill out when you go to college, you fill out that, I'm a night person, I'm a morning person, match me with this person.
Right.
It would make sense.
The eHarmony of cellmates.
Yeah. And again, it depends on what prison you're in. Newport would be more apt to listen to you. St. J, not so much.
Is that just a product of the people, the superintendent and the people who are in charge there?
Yeah, COs. Typically the COs and people running it. Yeah, for sure.
Maranda, what would you be like as a cellmate? How would you keep your room? Are you a tidy person?
Yes, very. Yes.
Because you see these people in jail, they keep it tight. They're cleaning their shoes with toothbrushes and toothpaste. Then you see the opposite, and you can smell them from outside the room. What's the worst case scenario for a cellmate for you? What kind of personality would you absolutely clash with?
If they were very disrespectful and they talked bad about people and they thought they were like
better than
anyone, yeah. If they're like a very like dirty person, like just leave their stuff all over the floor and just like not care and just not pick it up and expect you to do it or other people to do it.
Out in the free world, there's so many ways to solve problems and conflicts between people. I'm curious to hear in prison and jail when there's there have been that conflict, that friction, what's kind of the next step? Like how does that go? How does that play out?
You kind of push it down and just kind of throw it under the rug. And hopefully it levels itself out. Sometimes you'll have a roommate that you can talk to, and, again, it depends on the person.
How important is that, though, to be paired up in a, living situation that you can deal with?
Pretty important. I mean, it's for your well-being, for sure. You don't want to go into it every day stressed, thinking, what's going to happen? What am I going to do? What's he going to say?
Are the units broken up into, they try to match like people together somewhat by offense or by mental health issue? Or
No, not the ones I've been in.
No.
Springfield does that, I think. I've never been to that prison, so I know they have more of a mental health ward, I guess.
A unit, sure.
There's nothing like that anywhere else.
So you just pretty much were in general population for the whole time?
Yeah.
How do you find kind of forming relationships with other people in jail and in prison? Are there real, true friendships and relationships that come out of that? Or is everyone kind of looking out for themselves, doing their time, and then they go their separate ways?
Everybody's looking out for themselves, pretty much. You might see it from time to time, guys, that I guess I never have, but I'm sure people have.
So, yeah, I mean, you can make a friend that will serve a purpose while you're there.
Yeah,
everything.
absolutely.
Single serving friends.
Yeah, it's your drug friend or your, whatever.
Yeah, just somebody to do laps around the yard with.
Yeah.
What improvements would you suggest to a jail system, knowing what you've heard from the presentations? What suggestions would you make if you had the Department of Corrections Commissioner right here and you had a chance to make a couple bullet points? What would you suggest?
I would suggest probably matching people better to their personalities. Nah, that's really what I would mostly talk about, that main detail, because it's important.
I thought a lot about this, and I in the past I've even done a project with my students where it's kind of like a design your own jail.
Actually, I spoke to one of those students. Yeah, they came by last year.
Yeah, and I know it's kind of a talking point to look at other countries and, well, Norway has this or whatever, and sometimes comparing apples and oranges. But personally, from all these, these conversations, and I know there's a lot of kind of existing research, quote unquote, from colleges and academics on this. Right now, prison is just so designed to be so punitive. It's almost supposed to be nasty and not fun and not supportive by design, because in our culture, in our society, we have a lot of people who are looking at the Shawns of the world and saying, you deserve, quote unquote, to be punished for what you did. And I just think that's so backwards. And so no one is looking at people, or not enough people are looking at people coming out of jail and saying, okay, you did your time, welcome back with open arms, let's get you back into society, like the Dismas House tries to do. We're almost setting people up for failure. So just off the kind of those bullet points, I think that, education and job training, how many people spend their time watching movies on tablets when we could be teaching them a trade and getting them, and not for 22 cents an hour or whatever, but making a decent living so that when you come out, you can have rent, or you can have an apartment, you can have a car to then get that other job. It just seems like the deck is so stacked against, even once you get out, hopefully you have a support system. Hopefully you have friends and family. I know I'm always shocked when you all share the residents, right? You might have hit your, minimum release, or, you've done the minimum time, but if they don't approve of you have a good place to go, they're not going to let you out. Well, you might not have a good place to go because all the people and friends, were part of the problem that got you there. And, how many people are raising their hands saying, hey, they can come live with me. They can, be part of that support. So that education and that training strikes me as something that we're really lacking.
And I mean, jail could be a time to really do some teaching. People come to Dismas and they almost never had a sit-down style family dinner. Maybe we take the time in jail, to really encourage healthy eating habits and exercise and steps towards improving mental health. Maybe that would just be phenomenal first step.
A lot to ask for, I think. Sure. Department of Corrections, yeah.
Well, I mean, money's obviously always an issue. What's the food like there? I've seen the menus. It's high calorie. You're talking 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day, plus the commissary.
And no rec.
Yeah. So now you're at Dismas. How are you moving forward? How have you adapted to Dismas? What's it like? What's your takeaways from what Dismas is? Where are you headed?
At Dismas, been here about 3 weeks, I guess. This whole area is new to me. I'm from Caledonia County. not too far away, but far enough to not know the area.
Is that beneficial for you to have a completely fresh start?
Yeah, I guess. Yes and no. The reason why I came down here is because of my job. I wouldn't have to travel as far, I guess. And the Dismas house was a good fit, I think, and to get out and to be around maybe some supportive people in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it'll never be perfect, but I think you're in fairly good company. Everybody's kind of in flux themselves.
And so I'm working. I have a full-time job.
What do you do?
I work at Pompanousic Mills, build furniture. Right now I'm building beds. I'm in the setup department, so I install the drawers and doors on all the furniture. Pretty good job. I enjoy it.
What are your short-term goals, I would say, and maybe long-term?
Short-term, I guess, is start saving money. Open up a bank account, start saving some money. For my future is where I'm going to go after Dismas House.
Where would you like to go?
Really undecided yet. I don't really know.
Well, you may adapt to the Upper Valley and think it's a good place.
I think I'll be in this area somewhere, but where, I don't know. Maybe closer to work.
Yeah, affordable housing is obviously an issue.
Yeah.
All right, Miranda, Doug, I mean, what's been your key takeaways of what a typical Dismas experience is for a resident?
I think it's helpful to them, and you guys make sure they get what they need that they didn't get when they were away. Yeah, really. You just help them, which I think is good, because I don't know if Shawn will agree with this, but it could help a lot of people if they have that just little support from you guys. It could really make a big impact on their life.
For sure. Any little bit of help like that is a positive.
In my experience from seeing, having done this for a few years now, I really think the Dismas House is awesome, and it always shocks me whenever Jeff says well there's 4 others in the state or whatever it is, and there's a little bit we get a little bit of funding, and but we only have so and so beds. It's like, how are we not putting this program into place in more places? How are we really being honest in our system and saying, all right, you served your time, out the door, on you go, but you're on your own, and go find a $1,400 apartment in the Upper Valley with limited job skills, or maybe even you have job skills, but now potentially people not hiring you because of your record and your history. That medical care you were getting in prison, the food you're eating in prison, as the low quality as they may be, for some people that might be better than the nothing that they get in the free world. So I just think it's so important what Dismas is doing, and I hope whenever I have a chance, I tell people about it and the mission. And I hope that as a state and politically, we can support more of that type of effort.
And I think other states are even worse. I mean, it's my understanding there's certain states out there that they don't care where you go when you get kicked out of this jail. We don't care if you need a transitional house. We don't care what you need. Get out. We're overpopulated. I mean, that'd be substantially worse.
Which seems so backwards when I have to imagine, maybe, I don't know if, how much kind of research and data you have to support this, but looking at that recidivism rate, how many people going through a Dismas program end up back in somewhere in the system in the future versus if they didn't have any kind of, intervention or support at all. I have to imagine, it makes a difference.
And that's something we need to improve on documenting. We never really tracked people after they left Dismas. I mean, I've built some relationships, and I keep in touch with people for up to a year after they leave, but at some point I lose touch. But I think that would be very interesting. What are the long-term effects of having a little bit of support?
I think those are the kind of things we need to kind of get that political support. If we're going to get some politician, some lawmaker to say, yeah, I'm going to go champion your cause. I'm going to advocate for raising $10 million and building out this program. I think people want to show me that it works. And anecdotally, we can have these conversations. But yeah, that would be awesome kind of data to get.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Going to Dismas. Learn more about Dismas of Vermont at dismasofvt.org.
Thank you for listening to this Jam podcast. If you have found this program interesting and would like to find more Upper Valley content or learn how to produce your own media, please visit us at uvjam.org.